Something strange is happening in the twin flame collective, and if you've felt the sudden shift, the heaviness, the clarity, the unexpected irritation toward the one you once adored, then listen closely. Because what you're experiencing isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. A spiritual turning point the universe has been preparing you for since the very beginning. This isn't the soft, romantic part of the journey. This is the part no one warns you about. The part where the love doesn't disappear, but the illusion does. You are entering the phase known as the final purge, a rare, powerful energetic reset where your soul begins rejecting everything that once kept you attached, entangled, or emotionally dependent on your twin flame. It's the moment your higher self steps forward and says, "Enough." And here's the truth most won't tell you. Before union comes clarity. Before clarity comes detachment. And before detachment comes dislike. Not hatred. Not rejection. But the unmistakable feeling that something inside you is shifting. That their energy no longer fits the person you're becoming. If this resonates, you're not imagining it. You're evolving. And today, we're diving into the 6 powerful spiritual signs that reveal exactly why this sudden dislike emerges. Why it's not a mistake, not a failure, but the final spiritual doorway you must walk through before your soul can claim its highest timeline. Let's begin. Sign 1. The collapse of the idealization phase. There comes a moment on the twin flame journey when the veil finally lifts, and the person you once saw as a divine reflection begins to appear in their raw human form. This is not a loss, it is the beginning of true spiritual clarity. The pedestal you placed them on begins to crumble, not out of disappointment, but out of awakening. You start to see them without the layers of fantasy, destiny, and spiritual projection. The illusion dissolves, and what remains is a living, breathing human being with flaws, shadows, wounds, and limitations. For the first time, you are no longer blinded by the potential of who they could be. You see who they are right now. And that clarity is sacred. As this clarity sharpens, something powerful happens. Their avoidance, once interpreted as a phase or a lesson, becomes unacceptable. Behaviors you excused for months or years suddenly feel misaligned with the person you are becoming. Their silence no longer feels mysterious. Their inconsistency no longer feels like divine timing. Their emotional unavailability no longer feels like a spiritual test. Instead, it begins to feel too low vibrational for the version of you that has been quietly rising. You start realizing that it is not spiritual to tolerate emotional neglect. It is not unconditional love to abandon yourself for someone's potential. This is the beginning of sovereignty. And then, the most profound shift of all emerges. You stop romanticizing pain. The chase no longer seduces you. The longing no longer defines you. The heartache that once felt meaningful now feels exhausting. You begin to understand that the universe never intended for your love story to be built on suffering. That the sacredness of the journey does not lie in enduring repeated wounds, but in learning when to release what harms your spirit. You no longer feel the desire to fix them, heal them, or carry their emotional weight. The toxic parts of the connection lose their spiritual glamour. They are not soul lessons anymore, they are simply misalignment. This is the collapse of the idealization phase, and although it feels like loss, it is actually liberation. It is the moment your soul steps out of fantasy and into truth. And that truth makes space for something real, authenticity, self-respect, and the purest form of love, the kind that begins within you. Sign 2. The activation of the solar plexus. There comes a point on the spiritual path where the energy in your solar plexus, the center of personal power, self-worth, and inner authority, begins to awaken with a force you can no longer ignore. This activation marks the moment your self-respect finally overrides your emotional attachment to your twin flame. It is subtle at first, like a quiet knowing rising from the core of your being, but soon it becomes a blazing truth. You begin choosing yourself over the connection. Not out of bitterness or disappointment, but out of recognition that your soul has outgrown the version of you who once accepted so little in the name of love. The chase impulse, once fueled by longing and hope, simply dies. It cannot survive in the presence of inner authority. You no longer chase because you no longer feel incomplete. As this power center ignites, confidence begins to replace longing. The solar plexus activates most intensely during the final purge, and with it comes a clarity that cuts through illusion like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. You suddenly feel anchored, firm, and self-assured in a way that surprises even you. You hear yourself thinking, "I deserve better, better behavior, better love, better emotional presence, better from them and better from myself." This is not pride, this is soul memory. It is your higher self reminding you of the standard you once lowered for the sake of connection. That lower frequency cannot follow you into the next chapter of your evolution. With this newfound inner strength, something unexpected occurs. The dislike you feel toward your twin is no longer emotional pain, it becomes a sign of power. A sign that your vibration has risen above their stagnant patterns. You begin to see their immaturity clearly, without the spiritual filter that once softened their actions. Behaviors that once felt tolerable now feel energetically repulsive. Not because you love them less, but because you love yourself more. Your standards rise naturally, effortlessly, as a result of your awakening. This shift can feel strange, even unsettling, because you are no longer pulled toward them by old wounds or karmic strings. You are standing in your power now. And from this elevated place, you realize the truth. The moment you stopped needing them was the moment you stepped into your real strength. The solar plexus activation is not the end of the connection, it is the beginning of your sovereignty. Sign 3. The breakdown of telepathic overload. One of the most profound and liberating stages of the twin flame journey arrives quietly, almost mysteriously, through the breakdown of telepathic overload. For months, maybe even years, their energy lived inside your mind like a persistent background hum. Never fully present, yet never fully gone. Their thoughts, emotions, and energetic signals would bleed into your own, creating a mental fog you grew accustomed to without realizing how heavy it truly was. But then, something shifts. Almost overnight, the static lifts. The constant mental noise dissolves. And for the first time in a very long time, you find yourself in an eerily quiet mental space. It feels unfamiliar, strange, even surreal. Yet beneath the initial confusion lies a sense of freedom your soul has been yearning for. As this telepathic pull fades, you begin to notice something you could never see clearly before: how draining their energy actually was. The connection was intense, yes, but intensity is not the same as harmony. What once felt spiritual and magnetic now reveals its true weight, and you recognize how much of your mental bandwidth was being consumed by their presence. With that energetic tie loosening, you suddenly feel lighter, clearer in thought, more grounded in your own essence, and intellectually liberated. The absence of their emotional chaos, their unresolved wounds, or their running energy creates a space that feels open and breathable. A peace you didn't realize you were missing begins to settle into your life. This stillness, this quiet, can easily be mistaken for dislike. It isn't hatred. It isn't bitterness. It's neutrality. A neutrality so new and so vast that it feels like rejection compared to the emotional intensity you were used to. But neutrality is not a lack of love, it is a sign of healing. It is the sign that your energy has shifted from entanglement to independence. You begin preferring the silence to the connection, not because the connection is meaningless, but because the silence is finally giving you back your mind, your balance, your identity. And here is the spiritual truth. Telepathic overload breaks only when your soul is ready to stand in its own light. When you can hold your own energy without blending, merging, or sacrificing yourself. This stage is not a loss, it is a return. A return to your inner peace, your mental clarity, and the unshakable quiet that signals true spiritual maturity. Sign 4. Your emotional body rejects their old patterns. There is a sacred moment on the twin flame path when your emotional body begins to rise in vibration faster than the connection itself. What once felt aligned, magnetic, and spiritually significant suddenly feels heavy, uncomfortable, or even intolerable. This shift isn't dramatic, it's subtle, quiet, but undeniably powerful. You begin noticing that their ego-driven behaviors, the ones you once brushed aside as part of the journey, now trigger immediate discomfort within you. Their running, their inconsistency, their denial of feelings, their avoidance of responsibility. These patterns that once felt like spiritual lessons now feel childish. Instead of trying to interpret them or make sense of them, your first response becomes a visceral and instinctive. No. Not a mental rejection, but an emotional one. This shift is a sign of profound growth. It means you have outgrown their vibration. You are no longer resonating with the version of them who is still stuck in fear, ego, or immaturity. Your emotional body begins to communicate with crystal clarity, saying, "This no longer matches me," and "This energy is no longer welcome." These are not thoughts, they are frequencies. Energetic signals within your auric field telling you that you cannot go backward. Your soul has evolved, your sensitivity has sharpened, and your emotional intelligence has deepened. As your vibration rises, anything misaligned becomes immediately noticeable, and immediately rejected. This growing dislike is not spiritual failure. It is your nervous system protecting you. The body always knows before the mind does. When your frequency elevates, your body instinctively repels anything that attempts to drag it down. This repulsion is not anger, resentment, or even bitterness. It is an act of divine self-preservation. It is your spiritual immune system activating. What once felt like love mixed with longing now feels like emotional risk, and your system refuses to tolerate it. The emotional detachment that follows is not coldness, it is healing. It is the moment you stop romanticizing chaos and start honoring your peace. You no longer feel the urge to rescue, fix, justify, or hold space for behaviors that your soul has graduated from. Instead, you feel a deep need to protect your inner world. And that instinct is sacred. This is not the end of love, it is the end of self-abandonment. Your emotional body is not betraying the connection, it is guiding you toward alignment, sovereignty, and the higher timeline your soul is now ready to step into. Sign 5. The emergence of your higher timeline. There comes a moment on the twin flame journey when your higher timeline begins to reveal itself, and everything you once believed about the connection starts to shift. Not because the love disappears, but because your soul expands beyond the limits you placed around that love. As you align more deeply with your purpose, your mission, and your authentic path, you begin to notice something surprising. The connection that once felt cosmic, overwhelming, and life-defining now feels small. Not insignificant, but no longer the center of your universe. Your future no longer depends on them. You begin prioritizing your soul mission, your personal expansion, your healing, and the real-world goals your heart has been quietly whispering about. These elements grow louder, brighter, and more fulfilling than the emotional roller coaster of the connection ever was. This is the emergence of your higher self taking the lead. You feel it pulling you forward, gently but firmly, away from stagnation and toward evolution. What once felt like destiny now feels like distraction. Not because the bond is false, but because the version of the connection you clung to was rooted in waiting, longing, hoping, and sacrificing your own growth. You begin to see how long you've been holding your breath, pausing your life, waiting for them to awaken or choose you in the way you needed. And suddenly you're done. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. Out of truth. And here comes the most unexpected part. You start disliking them not because of who they are, but because of who they represent. They symbolize the old you, the version of yourself who tolerated breadcrumbs, who believed that emotional struggle was proof of love, who forgave without reciprocity, who settled for spiritual potential rather than real-world presence. That version of you no longer exists. You are stepping into a new timeline where your energy is too elevated, too empowered, and too aligned for that old dynamic to follow. In this higher timeline, love is not chaos. Love is not waiting. Love is not imbalance. Your soul no longer resonates with the version of the connection defined by pain or pursuit. So the old timeline begins to collapse, and with it, the emotional attachment that once felt unbreakable. This is not the death of the connection, it is the rebirth of you. And from this higher place, everything becomes possible. Sign 6. The integration of the heart-mind alignment. There comes a rare and sacred moment on the twin flame path when the heart and mind, after years of conflict, finally align. Until now, your heart carried the unconditional love, the spiritual connection, the soul recognition. It knew the bond, the meaning, the higher purpose. Meanwhile, your mind held the logic, the boundaries, the reasoning your heart refused to accept. These two parts of you lived in different worlds, one in devotion, the other in reality. But during the final purge, something extraordinary happens. They meet. They merge. They agree. Your heart whispers, "I love them." And your mind finally replies, "Yes, but this is unhealthy." Your heart remembers the connection. And your mind adds, "This is unbalanced." Your heart sees the beauty. And your mind stands firm, saying, "This needs distance." This is the first time you experience true internal unity. And that unity, this alignment, feels like dislike at first. Not because the love has died, but because clarity replaces confusion. The emotional push-pull that once kept you tangled in their energy dissolves. The longing that tugged at your spirit finally quiets. You stop imagining what they could become and start seeing what they consistently are. And from this place of coherence, you no longer feel the magnetic chaos you once mistook for destiny. You feel certainty. You feel truth. This is not hatred. It is coherent clarity. The mind and heart are no longer battling for dominance. They are speaking with one voice for the first time in your journey. And in this unity you realize something profound. You do not need them to feel whole. You never did. The core wound that kept you attached, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being alone, the belief that they were your missing piece, finally dissolves. You see that the love you felt for them was always a reflection of your own soul, your own capacity to feel deeply, your own divine essence. They were the mirror, not the source. As this truth takes root, your emotional independence becomes unshakable. Not cold. Not closed. Just whole. You stop waiting for their healing to validate your own. You stop hoping their awakening will be the key to your liberation. You already hold the key. You already are the liberation. This is the heart-mind integration. The moment your spirit becomes sovereign. The moment you finally shift from attachment to alignment. And there it is, the truth no one talks about, yet every awakened soul eventually walks through. The stage where your vibration rises, your clarity sharpens, and the version of your twin flame you once held onto can no longer follow you into your higher timeline. If you're experiencing these signs, remember, this isn't the end of your journey. This is the upgrade. The liberation. The doorway into the version of yourself that no longer chases, no longer waits, and no longer sacrifices your peace for potential. Your dislike isn't a failure, it's a frequency shift. Thank you for sharing your energy with me today. If this message resonated with you, if it brought clarity, comfort, or confirmation, please give this video a like and subscribe to join this growing community of awakened souls navigating the path with wisdom, strength, and sovereignty. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with the word Purge to claim your release, your healing, and your next level of spiritual independence. Your comment isn't just engagement, it is an energetic declaration to the universe. Until next time, stay grounded, stay aligned, and remember, you are whole. You are rising. And the final purge is your doorway to the timeline your soul has been waiting for.